Okay, this week I'm going to introduce you to working with 3D capabilities in After Effects. We're going to look at how to utilize a kind of 3D space with 2D graphic content. And then in the coming weeks, we will dive into Cinema 4D Lite, which is a 3D modeling and animation software, which then can plug into After Effects. So we're going to be working with 2D content within 3D space this week. And so to get started, I'm just going to create a new composition here with the same settings we've been using. And in my comp, let me go ahead and create a layer. I'm just going to create a new shape layer. And in my shape layer, I will just draw some kind of shape to give us something to work with. Okay. Now in order to utilize 3D, right now, I'm just looking at this in 2 dimensions. If I open up my shape layer here and I see my transform contents, right? I have a Y and an X position, meaning Y is vertical positional information and the X is horizontal. So to utilize 3D, and you might have to do this toggle switches and modes if you're working with track maths or whatever, just click this button so you get these other additional switches here. And the one that we're going to use is the 3D switch. So on my shape layer in my composition now, I've made this particular shape a 3D shape. And we can see the difference here now is now I have an additional axis to work with, and that's the Z axis. So if I go ahead and scrub through, you'll see we now have a different type of cursor here, one that has Y is green, X is red, and Z is blue. This is kind of standard for 3D animation software to have this type of pivot and cursor that I'm able to manipulate. So what I'm doing actually by scrubbing over the Z information is pulling this in and out of a 3D space. So I'm pulling it farther away and now closer to the frame or the camera. So we've been working with a camera, whether we kind of recognize it or not. We have a camera here. It's a default camera in the scene, and we're looking through that camera. So to see what this looks like in more of a 3D space, I can change this camera here. Let's go to a top view. And now you see that I can access that cursor in the Z space, and I can pull this forward and back. If I'm looking at the top view now, this isn't so helpful because it has to be relative to some kind of camera on the scene. So maybe the best thing to do is to create a camera. So if I go to layer, or let's say, where is it? Composition or layer, new, and camera layer. That's what I'm looking for. Layer, new, camera. So there's 2 types of cameras I can add to my scene. We have a 2-node camera and a 1-node camera. A 2-node camera is the one that I would always recommend working with. What it does is it gives you a node, a positional node at the camera, and then also a point of focus so that you can move. I'll show you the difference. A 1-node camera, let's put that in the scene. Now you can see from our top view, if I scroll out, I have this new object. Here it is down here in my composition, my layer list here. I have a camera, and now you can see it. This is what it's showing me. Showing me that my camera is positioned here, and this is the field of view, right? And then I have what's in the scene here. Let's go ahead and look through. Let's do instead of here. So this is where I can change which camera I'm looking through. And I can have 1 view or I can select 2 views. So I have a top, and what I can do, I want to click on, you see these little blue corners here. That means that this panel is selected or this panel is selected. So here I'm just going to change this panel to the active camera and zoom in on it. And let's frame it up here so I can see it, right? So now I'm looking through this active camera. Once I create a camera in the scene, that default camera is gone, and now this camera gets prioritized as the active camera. So what I can do with this camera, right? Let me zoom out here so you can see. This is a 1-node camera, and I am going to go to I'll just click on it and press and and I have my R, so I have my rotation. I have rotation in Z and X and Y now. So I have all of these different rotations. Let me go ahead and rotate in the Y rotation. And just so you can see what I'm doing here, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. I'm rotating around the Y axis. So when I'm rotating the camera, I'm rotating around the Y. If I rotate around the X, it will rotate the camera up and down. You'll see here, ready? See, rotating it around that X axis. Now you can kind of see more in 3D space, this cursor. So I rotate, and I'm able to do it kind of freeform in space too by using this cursor. So I can scrub through in the layer attributes here. I can scrub through. I can also just reset and reset, right? And now, but you'll see now that what I'm doing actually is moving the camera rather than moving the object. And so this is how we can create a scene that's more dynamic, larger than, and that we have in a kind of 3D space here. So let me zoom back out. Okay, so the same is true with this shape layer. So now you can see as I'm looking through my top view, I can, you can see now what this is doing. This is actually pulling this object back and forth in the scene. So what I'm going to do now is that's a one node camera, right? It just gives me one point of manipulation of where the camera is located. Delete that camera. Now I just have my standard default camera that I can't manipulate its position. I can't rotate it or move it in space. Let me go up and go layer new camera again, and this time choose a 2-node camera. Now, if you know anything about cameras here, we have the kind of focal distance, and these mimic what a lens of like a DSLR lens or a film lens we have, and these will all give us like different focal lengths depending on the film gauge and things like that. So if you are a filmmaker or know about filmmaking, I actually hope that you're learning some of these things with Kathleen and Todd in some of your other classes, ATC classes. So if you have some of this information stored in your brain, here it is. We can choose what kind of camera we want to use, what kind of lens we want to use, but I'm just going to stick with this 50mm lens is fine. What a 2-node camera will do is it gives you not only, see, we have this new little pivot point out here, and this is the kind of position, or this is where the camera will focus. So I can still rotate the camera, but the camera will still maintain it will still be pointed at whatever this node is in the scene. So if I open this up, I have all these camera options here. And let's see, point of interest, right? So now the point of interest is the second node, and that's, if I move this point of interest, you'll see that my camera's rotating, right? Rotating that way. And let's see if I move it this way. So I'm not moving the camera, I'm not rotating the camera, although it's affecting the rotation of the camera, I'm moving the point of interest. And that is what's moving the camera. So what I can do is I can, for instance, I can parent, right, this point of interest. Let me first lock it. Let's position it kind of right on top of this shape that I've made, and let's parent this to the shape. See if that will work. And now if I move the shape, that point of interest should move with it, but it says that there's an expression error, so let's see what it is. Let's see, maybe the point of interest needs to parent to the position. And now if I move the position of the shape, the point of interest should move with it. Yeah, it's doing it, see? Okay, so as the shape moves, so I needed to parent. I can't just parent it to the shape layer. I needed to parent this attribute to an attribute in the shape layer. So now as I move this shape, the camera moves with it. Now we don't necessarily get too much going on here in our scene that looks different. And then again, we will keyframe these things. So let's set some keys, just so let me set a position key, and then 5 seconds in, I move the position over here. Now we can preview it. You can kind of see, I can go back to my one view, so I have more of a full screen, and let's see what that looks like. It's just this, the shape starts to rotate. Even though the shape's not rotating, it's the camera rotating. Let's rotate the shape as well. Let's see, what do we want to rotate? Let's rotate it this way. Let's rotate it around the X. Let's give it 90 degrees, so it's kind of just almost a straight line. And then after 5 seconds, I will rotate it like one time around, maybe. Okay, so now we have the shape flipping in a 3D space. So we can add other shape layers to our scene here. Let's add let's see what else we want to maybe add here is a new, let's do a solid layer just so there's something in the background. I kind of like that, maybe a darker color. Okay, dark gray. Let's put this below my shape layer. And then perhaps I'll create another shape, a new shape layer. This time I'll put a fill on it. And any layer that I want to be able to manipulate in 3D space, I will have to check this box. Otherwise, I'm not able to access that Z information. So let's go to my two views here. So you see it's still, this shape is 2D. So I'm still able to see it in the camera, but if I go ahead and make it 3D, now it's positioned relative to the 3D space that we're looking at here. Okay, so it's no longer 2D. And let me put this now below here, and maybe I'll change some of these options just to, now we also have this thing called material options, and that's something we will get into maybe next week. But I just wanted this week introduce you to working with 3D space and manipulating these objects in 3D space. So let me go here and contents, shape 1, and then get rid of this color. I'd like to actually to have no fill. And then for my fill, I'll just bump down the opacity a little bit there. Okay, so now let's see if I begin to move this shape. I'm going to do one other thing here in my shape layer 1. I'm just going to increase that stroke width. That's a lot, maybe like that. Okay, right, so let's see. So it does something like this. And now you can see that's what I want it to do. It's cutting across the blue other shape. So in the second shape layer, I've made it 3D. And let me go ahead and open up its position information, press P. And oh, that's shape layer 1. Shape layer 2, position. Let's move this all, let's bring this super close at the beginning of our timeline and set a key. And then at 5 seconds in, we can move this all the way back. If I hit shift, I should be able to scrub. Yeah, if I hit shift, I'm able to scrub much farther. So if I hit shift, I'm able to basically scrub at double speed. That's just a little helpful hint. So now let's see what this looks like. Let's go back to our one view. And the shape is going backwards in space and the other shape is flipping around. And that's just a little bit of an animation of using 3D space. So I think we'll get into some lights and material stuff and rendering perhaps next week before we dive into Cinema 4D. But again, just remember, we want to, if we're working in 3D space, we want to just click this toggle switches mode. Make sure these switches are turned on, these little cube switches. And then we want to add a camera to the scene that we can keyframe. We can also parent its point of interest, if it's a 2-node camera, to the positional information of an object so that it stays kind of centrally looking at that object. And then we're able to pull things in and out of 3D space using the new Z-axis that is created. And then here, remember, we can change our view and we can see what kind of camera. Here we have active camera, we also have camera 1. So camera 1 becomes the active camera. So if we have more than one camera that we've created in our scene, there'll be a list of them here.